Welcome everyone, I'm Spiro, joined with Sibel Edmonds, the founder and editor of Newsbud.
Hello everyone.
Now Newsbud, we're approaching our second year anniversary here very soon. We're growing every day and we'd like to thank everyone for their support out there. But for our members that have been with us since the beginning and since before Newsbud was Newsbud, those members have a very good understanding of what we're about here at Newsbud. But since we are growing at such a rapid rate, we're getting a lot of new members in, a lot of new people exposed to our content, and there's been several different questions about where we stand on certain issues geopolitically and on the war front and many other questions. And we want to clear up some of these questions that we've been receiving here today with our founder, Sibel Edmonds.
Yes, Spiro, I think that's a great idea. One of the things we said we wanted to do, and it's been so hectic, it's been a roller coaster of 2 years since the inception of Newsbud, was that we want to make it kind of interactive. And one way to make some of our presentations more interactive is to receive questions from our viewers and go through some of those questions, find the common theme, and then start addressing it. So there is no ambiguity of, well, I'm not sure if Newsbud is pro this or anti-Trump or pro-Obama or anti-Obama. It's good to kind of hash it out, put it out there, talk the talk, straight talk, not beating around the bushes. We talked about Syria and the fog of war. And I still get these questions. So what are you saying, Sibel? Are you pro-Assad or anti-Assad? First of all, I find the question so inappropriate and ludicrous because I am not a Syrian, okay? I don't live in Syria. I don't pay my taxes in Syria. I don't vote in Syria. It is for the Syrians in Syria to decide whether they like a certain candidate better or their current incumbent president better. It is not for us, the Westerners sitting in somewhere in the UK or the US or Canada, to say, now Assad is our president or is the person that I'm going to. It's ludicrous. And that applies everywhere. I'm not talking only about Syria. I'm talking about Turkey. I have gotten that, and I have gotten it from both sides. I have gotten from Turkish reporters, Turkish commentators reaching out saying, well, are you pro-President Erdogan? And I tried to politely answer that and say, look, I have been in the United States, living here, paying taxes for 30 years. In fact, I'm going to celebrate my 30th year on July 18. It's going to be 30 years since I moved to this country. I never voted. I have never voted in Turkey because I just turned 18 when I came to the United States. I have never paid taxes in Turkey. This is where I live, and there are so many issues here that I tackle. Some of them I have blown the whistle on. It was my whistleblowing journey had to do with what was taking place here in the United States, even though it involved certain Turkish elements from Turkey here in the United States. So it is a question that needs to be answered, and hopefully we don't have to do it repeatedly. What I am in macro terms, if you put it at macro level, I am anti-intervention. And I don't even like the words like pro or anti that much because it has that negative connotation. You say, I'm anti this, I'm anti that. I don't want to be anti. I am non-interventionist. I subscribe to non-interventionism, meaning I am against wars, the U.S. wars, no matter where it is taking place, whether it's in Libya, whether it's in Syria, whether it's in, I don't care where it is, whether it's Afghanistan, whether it's North Korea, unless it becomes a very clear defensive war, because there is a big difference between defense and offense. Okay, when we go and attack a country, okay, and wage war against a country that hasn't attacked us or is about to attack us, well, that is what? That is, you're looking at a war of aggressions. And we have been engaged in all these wars of aggressions for the past half a century. Vietnam never, ever attacked the United States. Okay? So I subscribe to non-interventionism. And it's not only about wars either. Okay? When I say I'm a non-interventionist, I also talk about other types of meddling. Okay? It may not be wars, but it may be coups, creating coup d'etats in all over the world, in this country or that country. We had that failed attempted coup in Turkey. I'm against paramilitary operations by the United States assassinating leaders in other countries. I'm going to bring up another thing, and I know this is going to upset some people. And as soon as they start getting upset, they kind of turn off and they say, fine, this person is not a humanitarian person. Here it goes. Are you ready? Are you ready for the attacks? Okay. Because I have never shied away from being attacked. Because if you're doing something and if it's meaningful, somebody, some group, somewhere is going to attack you. Otherwise, you're running for an office as a politician because you're saying nothing. Okay. As part of this non-interventionism notion that I have been a subscriber to forever, basically, as long as I can remember, is what we call U.S. foreign aids. Okay, in a lot of people, when you say, oh, here we gave $1 billion to this country, we gave $500 million to that country, for some reason, whether it's because of the mainstream media, maybe it's because of all the Hollywood movies, people start envisioning these starving people maybe somewhere in Africa, right? And us, the United States, pouring this $1 billion there, and we are filling their tummies. We are giving them breads, we are serving them cornflakes, the GMO cornflakes. We are giving them boxes of the long shelf milks. They think it is for humanitarian purposes. And this is a misconception that has been created in their minds, okay? Because U.S. foreign aid, majority, most of it, the big portion of it, has nothing to do with helping some starving population in some city or town or country. It has nothing to do with making some other country better, building great infrastructure. Our foreign aid translates into bribery. That's, I think, is the best way to put it out there, okay? I want to talk about that. Let's talk about it. Do you want to talk about that? This thing called U.S. foreign aid?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's essentially taxpayer dollars that the government is taking, our money, everyone's money here in the U.S., everyone who pays taxes, and every year, billions of dollars are going to all these other countries, going to Israel, going to Pakistan, all over the place.
That's absolutely right. Let's take a look at it, okay? In 2016, we as the United States, we have spent over $30 billion in 1 year, okay? And we gave Iraq $5 billion in 1 year, $5 billion. We gave Afghanistan $5+ billion in 1 year. We gave Israel $3+ billion in 2016. We gave Egypt $1.2+ billion. We gave Jordan another $1.2 billion. We gave Kenya $1.1 billion. We gave Pakistan in 2016 close to $800 million. Now, when you add all those up, you're looking at $30 billion, okay? Now, again, I have to put this on. Here's a description by the State Department. This is for foreign assistance, is aid given by the U.S. to other countries to support global peace, global security, and development efforts. $30 billion we have given to these countries, okay? Let's take a look at Iraq. $5 billion was poured into Iraq, And I can tell you this, nobody can account for where that money really went. In Afghanistan, we spent $5+ billion in 1 year. We gave them $5+ billion. Do you think that money is going to building infrastructure, schools, feeding people? No. Who are the recipients? Who are the ones in charge of this money? In a lot of these countries, many of them, you're looking at corrupt, despotic regimes, okay? You know, whether they are Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, in Central Asia, Caucasus, whether in the Middle East, you have governments and government heads who have private airplanes with 24-karat commode. So where they piss is made out of gold. Do you know how much of this money goes into the pockets of those despots, those dictators, those corrupt regimes in those countries? I mean, Egypt, we gave Egypt $1.2 billion. Well, Egypt is another dictatorship. Do you know how many journalists every day gets to be arrested and put in jail and tortured? How many people get to be tortured and killed in Egypt? We are giving these billions of dollars to the heads of these countries and tell them, here it is. We don't go directly give it where it's needed. That's one side of it. Now the other side of it, that is the most mind-boggling aspect of this is this. We have at least $30 billion to send out to these countries, give it to their corrupt regimes and their kings and their queens, etc. While what is happening in our own country, in the United States? I was just looking at the statistics, the latest one, because I have been following these stats for the past 15, 16 years. Currently, in the United States, we have 1.6 million, more than 1.5 million homeless people. Okay? They have no roof over their heads. They live on the streets. Some of them, small percentage, have access to shelters. Guess what else? We have at least 40,000 homeless veterans in our country. Can you? 40,000 homeless veterans. These are the people, okay? These veterans are the ones that our country used, our government used, to send to those countries that we are giving $1 billion, okay, to $5 billion, $4 billion to bomb, kill people in the name of national security, which had nothing to do with our own national security. They come back home broken, whether it's physically, whether it's mentally, whether it's emotionally, whether it's a combination of all three. And this is how we treat them. This is how we treat our veterans in our country. We have 40,000 veterans homeless living on the street. And our government takes our tax money every year, gives $30+ billion to these corrupt countries, to their corrupt regimes and governments, to their corrupt kings and queens. Now, how does that make sense to you? How does that make sense to anyone in this country? How does it make sense to anyone in that whorehouse we call the US Congress? If we have $30 billion to throw at other countries and we say to help them with developments and give them food and shelter, when we have 40,000 plus veterans in our own country who are homeless, and we have 1.6 million people in this country, the superpower USA, who are homeless, how does that make sense? Is that a kind of an upside down world?
Well, it's completely, in my view, completely upside down. And like you said, I mean, these people, these veterans, a lot of whom go see combat and come back, like you said, they're all messed up. They feed a lot of them pharmaceutical drugs while they're there, and then while they're here as well. And then they deem them mentally incapacitated and take away a lot of their rights, you know. And then, like you said, they wind up on the streets. It's a terrible thing. And meanwhile, in addition to all that, the homeless and the hungry here in this country, our infrastructure is degrading. There was just that bridge that collapsed like a week or two ago in Miami.
Absolutely. I mean, take a look at Japan and their transportation system. Take a look at Singapore. Even when I go to some of the Middle Eastern countries, like even in Turkey, the metro system, the tram system, the public transportation is way above, more advanced than what we have here as a superpower, as the richest country in the world. We are the richest country in the world, okay? Our GDP alone dwarfs 2/3 of the world in terms of its size. How about healthcare? Okay, take a look at the stats here. Currently, we have more than 44 million people in this country, in the USA, okay, who have no health insurance, and another 38 million people who have inadequate health insurance. They don't have access to healthcare. They don't have money. They can't pay for it. They get to become homeless. They end up having a surgery. Then they come to collect their bills and they have to foreclose their homes and they have to go and live on the street. That makes up, when you look at 44 million and another 38 million, that's 1/3 of our population here in the United States of America. Now, as a country that can't provide the most basic needs, healthcare, to its population, how dare we, as a government, our government, with the whorehouse people there who say they are our representatives, hand out $30 billion that nobody ever has anything on it. It's unaccounted for. When it goes there, it goes there. You wash your hands off and you say, done. How much that 30 billion can do for the homeless veteran and homeless people that we have in this country? How much can it do in 1 year? Okay, in 1 year. How many people will have access to health care and be able to go and receive health care? That $30 billion in 1 year. Nobody wants to talk about this. So when I'm saying that we are non-interventionist, that I am non-interventionist, this is what I'm talking about. We are not engaged in any defensive wars, neither in Afghanistan, nor it was in Iraq, nor it is in Syria, nor it was in Libya. None of these were defensive wars. These were wars of aggressions. We went in there, okay? Look at the stuff we are giving to Saudi Arabia on Yemen. Yemen is one of the poorest countries in the world, okay? They can never be even close. That is laughable of threat to the United States of America. I mean, the mode of transportation in Yemen is camels. They are riding donkeys, okay? And we are saying we are every day bombing this country. They don't have like these tanks and these amazing airplanes. They don't have nuclear facilities. I mean, they don't have NSA. They don't have intelligence agencies in Yemen. I mean, they tie the messages on the claws of the pigeons and they say, go ahead, here it is. We are now communicating. This is the mode of communications. Let's talk about Afghanistan. Let's talk about Afghanistan. We bombed the hell out of Afghanistan, right? And we are still bombing the hell out of Afghanistan. And it was to do what?
Well, it's to spread democracy and make America great again. MAGA.
Well, no, actually, it was right after 9/11. We said we had two purposes there. We were going to eliminate Al-Qaeda and we were going to eliminate Taliban, okay? Well, Al-Qaeda, supposedly, this is according to our own US mainstream media, UK mainstream media, they are still thriving. They're doing very good in Afghanistan. In fact, they have added ISIS now. There was no ISIS. We created, of course, ISIS, but now they have not only Al-Qaeda, they have ISIS as well. As far as Taliban goes, we are about to recognize Taliban as the legitimate government of Afghanistan. Pakistan already does, and we are already dealing with them. And even if you go look at the mainstream media, search for recognizing Taliban as the official rulers of Afghanistan. So we had this 15, 14 years of war to eliminate Taliban only at the end, after we had so many veterans injured, after so many hundreds of thousands of people dying there, after all the buildings, the schools and the housings, everything that we bombed. Now we say, okay, you can be the ruler of Afghanistan. We didn't eliminate you. And not only you have now Al-Qaeda, you have also ISIS. But here it is, $5 billion. We give $5 billion, and then you will see Washington Post or New York Times saying, we built 4 schools in this particular Taliban Afghanistan province, right? 2 weeks later, there's another report. Oopsie daisy, Taliban bombed the heck out of the school because they don't want kids to go to school. They have madrasas. They go there, they move back and forth, and they recite, the religious script there. They don't want schools there. But then we send another $100 million. Some people in Taliban, the current government there, they pocket 80% of it. Then they build 2 mud houses. They call them a school. And then the next day, Taliban goes there and it destroys it. And guess what? All the stuff are happening in Afghanistan. We are giving them $4 billion, $5 billion, $6 billion every year. Not count the cost of wars. We are still bombing the heck out of them. Here in our country, infrastructure lagging behind most of the developed countries in the world. Healthcare behind almost all developed countries in the world. Homelessness, including our veterans. So when I say non-interventionist, I mean it in every way. It's not only wars, but it's also this waste that we are engaged in order to bribe the pendejo, dictator, despotic, corrupt governments of these countries. Egypt, Pakistan. I mean, these are the hubs of corruption. These are the hubs of torture. Talk about Assad's torture, and they are saying, okay, Assad was torturing his people. Sure, he did some torturing. Everybody does it. I'm not saying it's good, but they do it in their own countries. But you want to compare that to Egypt, what they are doing in Egypt? Do you really want to compare that to Pakistan? And we give them billions of dollars every single year? Now, where is Congress in all this?
Well, they're fundraising right now for for their midterm elections that are coming up. They're on holiday, and when they're not on holiday, they're fundraising. That's what it seems to be.
And they represent whose interests, really? Whose interests do they represent? Every single one of them.
I would say the lobbyists' interests it's who they represent. It's certainly not the American people.
And the lobbyist represents whose interests?
Well, the mega corporations, the multinational corporations, a lot of foreign interests, which is
military-industrial complex.
Yeah, absolutely.
Big pharma.
Exactly, and
oil companies. Do you see the Americans' interest anywhere at sight in any of the hearings, anything that they do in Congress, other than the lip service portion?
No, the whole thing is really a joke. It's really sick, and both sides are responsible in my view. It's not a partisan issue. It's not like, oh, the Democrats are good and the Republicans are bad, or vice versa. It's both sides of the aisle. They're both engaged in this, and meanwhile, the people have the illusion of choice, thinking, yeah, go Trump, go Clinton, and meanwhile, our country continues to go down the toilet.
Well, speaking of military-industrial complex and these pocketed whores in Congress, are you ready for this headline that came out yesterday from mainstream media? So this is not conspiracy theory coming from some blogosphere.
Which site published it?
I think it was The Hill. There were several sites, but here it is. It's news. If you go and search it on Google, you're going to see all the mainstream media published it. House lawmakers close Pentagon budget hearing to the public. Okay. So it's your taxpayer, okay? You, the taxpayer, it's your money, okay? It's your country, okay? They are supposed to be representing you, but they close these hearings of how much of your hard-earned money they are giving to these people and how much of it goes to these corrupt governments and the wars of aggressions. They close it. They say, you, the people, can't know what we are talking about here, what we are saying here. I mean, it started with, in my case, there were closed courts. The court hearings, they would close it to public. They would say it's national security, it's top intelligence stuff. Public, the journalists, they can't participate. Now, this was 2003, 2004. Now it has gotten to a point, look how they have gotten so bold, Spiro. The lawmakers, they say, we're going to close the hearing to the public. This is the budget hearing, and it's not for some CIA black budget that they go inside some skiff, which actually the Congress has no oversight over. This is the regular Pentagon budget hearing.
Well, I mean, The great reports published at newsbud.com by our military analyst, veteran Christian Sorensen, shed some light, obviously, into the out-of-control Department of Defense and Pentagon spending. But you're absolutely right. There is no transparency. There was a few months ago, it was big news for about a week that the Pentagon was going to get audited. Well, has that even happened yet? I haven't seen it. If it does, it's going to be a whitewash as it is. There's zero accountability in any branch of the government at this point.
And I loathe people, like, I have to say it now. I know some people are going to get really pissed off with me. I don't care. I say what I think, what I believe. If I want to sugarcoat and say nothing here and be very popular by all sides, Democrat love me, this loves me, Libertarian loves me. Again, this guy has been doing it all the time, Spiro. Rand Paul. Anytime he comes out and he says he's going to veto, he's going to fight this candidate, he's going to fight this budget, he's going to have a filibuster until audit happens. Big talk. And then last minute, oops, he walks backpedals his talk, all that talk. He actually goes votes for things. And initially, I was one of those people who say, yeah, he's standing up to these people. The first time I said, well, maybe he saw that he didn't gather enough support. The second time, I made another excuse for the guy. The fourth time, I was like, what the heck is going on here? Now, every time I see they are saying, oh, yeah, well, Rand Paul or so-and-so who talks big is saying this, I go like, it's just wait. In 2 days, when the time comes, he's going to pull back and he's going to do as every single one of those whores do in Congress. Now, why we are talking about this in light of non-interventionism and with the questions we started. These are the things that are happening. And right now I'm talking with the Americans, okay? Because we are in the US, I'm paying tax, I'm bleeding with these tax. I'm giving, let me give you the exact number. I'm giving $710 a month for insurance that is for catastrophic insurance. So it has, I don't know, something like $8,000 deductible, meaning anytime I go to doctors, I have to pay out of pocket. That is for catastrophic events. So if something terrible happens that the cost is $100,000, my insurance will kick in. It doesn't provide me with any access to any health care. I still have to get loans or scramble and pay for my own health care every time I go to a doctor, every time I take my child to a doctor. And infrastructure, healthcare, homelessness, all the stuff happening in our country, all these billions of dollars a day being wasted on the wars of aggression. We are giving this much to Saudi Arabia to go every day and drop this many cluster bombs in Yemen, right? The stuff we are doing in Syria, the stuff we are doing in Afghanistan, and $30+ billion a year we give to other countries when we can't feed our own homeless people, when we have 1.4 million plus homeless people. Now, in light of all this, what I don't get is this. When these things are happening here and it's affecting our day-to-day life here, we have these people who are saying, are you pro-Assad or anti-Assad? Should we be in Syria or shouldn't we be in Syria? Are you pro? It's what? Look where you live.
Right. No, I completely agree. I just had someone on Twitter badgering me saying that we're supporting the narrative that Assad used chemical weapons. And I just said, show me the documentation of where and when we said this. Because obviously anyone who follows Newsbud knows that that is a complete false statement made by a troll, a distractionary event. And yes, as you said, this goes back to also a lot of the campaign promises that all of these politicians talk really big about America first and all this stuff. And when it boils down to it, it's the same story, the same script over and over and over. I know you've traveled the world much more than I have, obviously, but I've been to a couple other places. And one of the first things that I thought was, wow, the roads are pretty nice. Here in the States, believe it or not, there's potholes everywhere. The roads are torn up, but that's just
No, you're right. The asphalt. We were comparing, saying even you go to some central area of these Middle Eastern countries and the asphalts are repaired. They're good. They are kind of buttery. And here we are, it's absolutely infrastructure, public transportation, all the stuff. and people are out there on social media everywhere. They are bickering and bickering and bickering about this, and it's not, you want to stop war. You know, one of the things I really liked in our video, Syria Under Siege, was what Zach Al-Sawaf said. He's a Syrian, American Syrian who lives in the U.S., and he said, I mean, it was priceless what he said. He said, you get these Americans and British, you know, a lot of them trash. They go to Syria, okay? They get money from Syrian government, and they are saying they are there to stop U.S. wars. It's like, you want to stop wars? Who are the ones who are waging wars? Why don't you get the heck out of my country there? Go back to your country and do something about your government. Whether you're American, whether you are French, whether you are British, go get your government, stop doing these stuff. So that's so very true. And I still don't get, I don't know where the logic or the lack of comes from for people to get so preoccupied with this, and they forget about these representatives in US. They don't even represent them. They represent the interest against their interest. It's not for the people. It is against the people. And it's definitely not by the people, because when you look at the net worth of these people in Congress, okay, take a look at the net worth of the people who are sitting, and they keep getting reelected. Some of them, there's no term limits, thanks to the because who's going to pass the law to put term limits? It's the Congress, right? So we are asking Congress to put term limits on themselves, but they're saying, well, you know, I'm filling my pockets up. And you guys are suckers. You come and every 2 years you're voting me in, voting me in. What is wrong with this picture? Honestly, what is wrong with this picture? We need to clean house. I mean, literally clean house. It's not going to happen by going, say, this time I'm going to vote Democrat. This time I'm going to vote Republican. And one of the things I want to do, we're going to be on the road. We're going to be having lots of extensive travel for the next couple of months. Then the Congress is going to be in recess, which is like, I don't know, 7 months out of a year they are in recess. But that's one of the things we should do. Next time we look at the dates when they're going to vote on these on these foreign aid. And there is this thing in economy called opportunity cost. Every time you spend money somewhere, that means you're not spending money on something else. Okay, that's not only for money; it's also for time. If you do this with your time, that means that you are not spending your time on something else. Well, these $30 billion that the United States Congress approved, the bribery that we give to the corrupt regimes, corrupt people in charge of these countries, could put shelter over this many veterans, this many homeless people's head. It can give health care to this many people. So should we do that? I'm in. You grab the camera, we'll grab the mic. It's going to be similar to what we did in, Texas.
I'm always
but we're going to go.
I'm always in. I'm always in.
You're in?
And I'll tell you what, you made a great point the other day. You and I were talking. You said that, I forget, I'm just paraphrasing here, that people have a better chance of getting rich by joining Congress than playing the lottery, for example.
Much higher chance.
Right.
And it's not only when they are serving there, because that was one of the things that I was exposing with my FBI whistleblowing, because you had other countries, whether Pakistan or Turkey, first of all, foreign country, okay, non-Americans, to give money to American representatives, in my book, is a goddamn treason.
Yes.
Okay? But it's legal in the United States. But do you know who made it legal? Congress.
Of course they did.
Because in any other country, at least it's being done openly here to say, okay, Israel or Turkey or this country gave Dennis Hastert $150,000. You would say, excuse me, he's not a Turkish or the Pakistani or Israeli representatives. He is running for election in the United States. How can you get foreign interests giving lobby money, election, campaign contribution to American representatives? It's that corrupt. It's that degenerate, the political state of our country. So partially they get it while they are in office, Spiro, but then what happens, again, FBI has all the files and all these congressional people, fake files, is a lot of things goes into the IOU book, meaning while you're in Congress, you, excuse my language, or actually don't excuse my language, you whore because they are whore, okay? Lobbyists are the pimps, and these mega corporations are the Johns, okay? So the Johns hire the pimps, aka lobbyists, to go and get the whores, which are the congressional people, all the representatives in Congress, pretty much, okay? They say, after you're done, 4 years, 6 years, you can join this lobby firm or that lobby firm, and I'm going to give you $1 million the moment you leave Congress. That's what Dennis Hastert did. He filled his pocket with all this money. In 2016, end of it, he left Congress. The first year, he had a contract with the Turkish government for $1.3 million a year.
Yeah, it's another example of the revolving door phenomena, basically, that exists between the government and the private sector. Like you said, there's all these kind of backroom deals, these little handshakes that take place, and we would be fooling ourselves if we thought that didn't have an impact on policy or legislation or on this country in general. I mean, there has been countless examples. You blew the whistle on Hastert. It was all over the news about the Clintons' pay-to-play scandals, all that kind of stuff. And at this point, all back to the false campaign promises, going to drain the swamp. Well, we all know that was nothing more than a campaign slogan, but one good place to start would be congressional term limits, because I think everyone needs to be, we need to recycle, get some of these people out of there, and we got to start somewhere, but that would be a good place in my opinion.
To give him some credit, though, as I was doing my research on the foreign aid, President Trump, he promised, one of his promises was he was going to way cut back on these foreign aids, aka bribery. It's a BS thing we are doing when we have all these needs here. And it's close to 33% or 34%. I mean, when you look at the billions, it still is a lot. We shouldn't give a penny. The analogy I make is, think about this family. There's a guy who's the breadwinner, and they are poor. The kids are starving. Then he gets $5-6 from hard work, and then goes and gives it 2 blocks away to a neighbor who needs less, It's like, why don't you take care of your own household, your own children, your own wife, your own spouse, right? Well, he said that, and he pushed for it. And from what I see for certain countries like Pakistan, that foreign aid has decreased. It hasn't been eliminated, but it comes with a caveat, because this is the weapon saying, Pakistan, you're getting close to China. Okay, here's what I'm going to do. No more bribery for you. There's not going to be anything going into your pocket. I'm going to cut back on that. It's not for the American people. It's not to put roofs over the heads of these veterans who have been serving their country. They were serving based on government's wrongful wars, okay? I'm not saying those wars, any of them are justified. But that's what military is for. It's supposed to be for defense. The government used them for these offensive wars. Okay, but they serve their country. And they are putting their lives on the line. And there are people, and I kicked out several people. And I say kicked out, saying I gave them refunds and I asked them to leave Newsbud. They were very disrespectful to Lieutenant Colonel Tim Ferner. And they're saying, well, somebody sent an email, and this is one of the Corbett's funders, and said something like, I hope your bodies, and this is an American who's saying that, I hope that Americans will go back home from Syria with thousands of body bags, corpses in body bags. That's disgusting. That is disgusting. It is disgusting on both sides. It's disgusting to have body bags in Syria. It's disgusting to wish body bags of Americans with their family. They're the ones out there. They are doing what the government is asking them to do, okay? It's not their choice to be there. And to wish death and have them in body bags is despicable, okay? But amidst all the stuff we talked about, regardless, is to say, are you pro-Assad or anti-Assad? It's just so shallow. It is so misguided. I don't want to respond to it because certain things you shouldn't even honor it by responding to it because that means you're placing value on it. We are not anti this president or pro that president. We are non-interventionists and we want to clean house. We want to say bring back the Constitution.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, we have no political affiliation here at Newsbud. We do not subscribe to any political ideology. We don't go for the left, the right, Republican, Democrat, none of that stuff. I mean, in fact, we have done many exposés showing how it's a false dichotomy, basically. So, and people... And there's, to be honest with you, there's not many sites, news platforms out there that share that in common with us. I mean, the majority of them have a political motivation. And so when people see a site like Newsbud that does not, they have a hard time wrapping their head around it and even accepting it. But, it's how it is.
No, you're absolutely right, Spiro, because you're right. Or some of the other sites that they want to see is people who are moving for the topic of the day. This is the special of the day in a restaurant. Next morning we'll go and we'll chase that. And the next day we'll talk about it's. Let's look inwardly. Let's see as a country where we are, not only with what we are doing to the rest of the world, but what we are doing to our own people here in this country. And either for the majority, if they believe there is no major issues with this upside down world in this country, as I said, with these aides, with the representatives, the foreign lobby is treason, should be treason. If they don't see any problems with that, then let's just do it. Let's say Constitution, we are declaring it moot. And stop celebrating 4th of July, by the way. No hot dogs for you. No hot dogs for you on 4th of July. If you believe there is nothing wrong in this country and that Constitution doesn't matter, how can you celebrate 4th of July when they have crapped upon our constitutions? They have basically said this has been suspended. It's no longer the law of the land here. It's not. And if you're okay with it and you still want to celebrate, then you are so misguided, you are so blinded. But on the other hand, if you see that there is something really, really wrong, then join us. Join us here at Newsbud. Don't go and join the choir that are taking your attention away from real macro issues and they make you preoccupied for these little tedious, tiny little shallow points. And join us when we go to Washington, D.C. Let's go confront them. Not only one-time deal for sure. A lot of organizations do that. You go right with camera there, you knock on some door, then you come back, and then we need to do it in such a way that we are persistent. We are persistent and say, this is not acceptable. And if you vote for this, for Egypt or Pakistan or Israel, or this countries get $5 billion, $6 billion, $4 billion, I'm going to kick you out of office. And I'm going to allocate the time, whether it's 15 minutes a day or 2 hours a day or 3 hours a week to say, this man or this woman from this district or this state voted for Jordan to get $1.5 billion.
Yeah, and the point you brought up about Rand Paul earlier, Rand Paul over the years has said a lot of things that a lot of people liked. I've heard things that he says where I'm like, man, this guy, wow, this is great.
Thumbs up, Rand Paul. Absolutely, me too.
And like you said, just several times, totally gone the opposite direction of who he tries to portray himself to be and what he tries to, instill, and contribute. And to me, if you look at it, of course they're going to have all of these polls that are rigged saying, oh, the majority of the population in the U.S. supports airstrikes on Syria or supports this and that. But when it comes down to it, ask around. If there's that many people, I don't see them, but...
I don't see it either, Spiro. I don't think I have come across anyone, and I'm out and about, and I'm not only among the political activists, whether I go to a doctor's office or a dentist's office or I go and get a haircut, I haven't heard. I mean, because I bring up the topics and I don't know where they bring. I don't trust the polls. I think a lot of these polls are BS, and it is there to shape perceptions because everybody reading is saying, well, maybe I am among the irate, stupid minority. 90% of the country says it's a good thing. Ooh, so maybe I should say it's a good thing. I think that's absolutely it's mind control. It is shaping perceptions, and it's kind of a psychological warfare here in our country. I don't believe who conducts those polls. What kind of a size do they have? And I don't believe it for a second. I have to say, on the other hand, it's mind-boggling to see people keep repeating the same pendejos over and over every 2 years. And if you go and talk with them one-on-one, they will tell you things like, oh, well, the thing is, what do you expect? All politicians are corrupt and everything. And this guy was lesser of evil than the next one. So I voted. They kind of justify it in their mind. And this whole notion of lesser of the two evils. With Rand Paul, as I said, it has become cry wolf phenomena for me. I don't even pay attention anymore. And then the other thing that is important, it's good to come out and admit that you were wrong on something. I think it takes courage. And I would like to say I was wrong about Rand Paul. I've known this for the past 6 years, but initially I bought into it. And I have to say I was semi-wrong. Does that count? Admitting it, I was semi-wrong even on someone I spent so many years respecting a lot, and that's Ron Paul, because he talks a great talk. He talks a great talk. And he's a clean man, okay? I would stand up for him when it comes to being clean. This man has not received a single dollar in lobby money. I can swear by that, as Ron Paul. And I know that Ron Paul is one of the few, if not the only congressman, when he was serving, he refused to go on these the trips, like they take Hastert to Turkey, they spend $50,000 trip. His wife and other countries that they take you and they give you $100,000 worth of trip. Well, that's bribery. Ron Paul has always refused that. But one of the problems I've seen with Ron Paul, and it started early on, has to do, he has surrounded himself with the wrong people, Spiro. If people go and look at my under oath deposition, I'm raising my right hand because it was under oath for 3 hours. You see the attorney who represented this corrupt Congresswoman, Schmidt, I think, was Bruce Fein. Bruce Fein is one of the dirtiest, nastiest, Zionist, Israeli lobby piece of shit, okay? And if you look at I don't know if the cameras, because it was recorded when I was giving my testimony in 2010, Bruce Fein, as a lobbyist, as an attorney lobbyist, was representing this corrupt Congresswoman. I actually brought it up during the deposition. I said, well, one of my job was listening to your conversation, Mr. Fein, and how you were cooking up stuff with Dennis Hastert and Dan Burton and all these congressional people, how you were playing with some of these Turkish organizations here in the United States. And he almost shit his pants. So please go and take a look at that deposition. Well, guess what? When he was running as a presidential candidate, Ron Paul had Bruce Fein as his top advisor attorney. And when he announced it, I almost had a heart attack. I said, you let the fox into the hen house? You have Bruce Fein? He pretends to be a constitutionalist. He's been a lobbyist, his wife. Oh my God, you just go read up on Bruce Fein. Okay? And today with Ron Paul Institute, unfortunately, Ron Paul has put a gatekeeper who is as, maybe not as disgusting as Bruce Fein, but he's doing a lot of damage to Ron Paul's reputation, to the Ron Paul Institute, is, what's his name, Daniel McAdams. It's very unfortunate for Ron Paul to have someone like Daniel McAdams there. And if you go and talk to people who used to support them, we have many veterans who have written letters to Ron Paul. They have, I don't know, I think as a gatekeeper, he's intercepting it. He's bad news for Ron Paul Institute. So if some of our viewers are Ron Paul supporters like I still am to a certain extent. I totally subscribe to his to his principles, he would say we shouldn't be giving U.S. foreign aids. That's one of the things Ron Paul says. He's the one who's always been anti-war. I have never heard Ron Paul ever advocating for any war. He doesn't make exemption. He's an honorable man, okay? So if you're a Ron Paul supporter, you're like me, okay? And if you want for that integrity, for that man's, his reputation to be intact, write to him, call him up, get to some of the people who sit on their board of directors, advisors, tell them it's time to say bye-bye to Danielle McAdams. There are so many good people out there who are executive producers. That man is bad news. So if you're a Ron Paul supporter, that's what I'm not going to say, go do it. That's what I suggest. That's what I recommend. I know it was supposed to be a 15, 20 minutes talk, Spiro, and it ended up being a long talk. Let's wrap it up. You're always so much better than me in so many different ways with intros and wrapping it up. I go yak, nonstop. But we are at Newsbud non-interventionist, whether it's Kurt Nemo, whether it's you, Spiro, whether it's Philip Kovacevic, whether it's Peter Lee. We don't have a single person on our team, Newsbud team, who is pro-war or who is not a non-interventionist.
Yeah, or even makes excuses trying to justify, actions by, interventionist actions by the government. I mean, you see that how many times? Just because someone will support a political candidate, whether it's Trump or whoever, they'll trip all over themselves just to make excuses to justify something that they normally wouldn't agree with. So anyways, this is a great discussion, Sibel. Thank you for taking the time to answer some of these questions today and to clarify some of this. And again, we're fast approaching our 2nd year anniversary here of Newsbud, and we'd like to thank everyone out there who has made this operation possible. And yes, thank you all. Stay tuned for more coming from newsbud.com.